friends, you're in the military with Samurai channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the United States of America, because once again, another day in a row, we are receiving the craziest updates exactly from this area. During the previous 24 hours, we received a lot of reports about Iran, about Greenland, about Venezuela, about Cuba, about Ukraine, about everything. So we see that the United States of America are very active when talking about their foreign policy. As for Iran, during the previous night, we received the report that within the next 24 hours, a conflict can happen, can occur in the territory of this country, but yet nothing happens. And furthermore, we believe that nothing is going to happen until the United States of America finishes its redeployment of forces. First of all, they need aircraft carriers, and according to information we have, the United States of America doesn't have anyone here. The sources are saying that currently an aircraft carrier is moving from the South China Sea in the direction of Iran, so most likely it will take up to 7 or 8 days before the aircraft carrier will arrive, so which means that most likely we won't see anything during these days. Most likely only within 8 or 9 days something is going to happen. As for the Greenland, during the previous 24 hours, the President of the United States of America made lots of very interesting statements, and lots of very interesting pictures were published. This is probably the most important one. Here we can see that the Greenland is making a very difficult decision, either the United States of America or the alliance between Russia and China. So the President of States stated that I can't rely on Denmark being able to defend itself on its own. They talked about it. They even added an extra patrol, and they were serious about it. They deployed an additional dog sled, then another one, but that's not going to do the trick. Furthermore, we had a report that the US military is ready to carry out Trump's orders regarding Greenland at any time. That was told, RIA Novosti was told by the US Department of War. The department added that the Pentagon has not yet made any decisions about changing the level of combat readiness of American forces on the island. But if you ask my opinion, I believe that the most important piece of news is not the statements and the things that were emphasized by the United States of America and the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. The most important thing are coming from Greenland itself. During the previous 24 hours, we received a lot of reports that the European countries are going to increase their presence on the territory of Ireland. The governments of Greenland, that's Danish and other allied NATO military forces, will be increasing their presence in Greenland from today. So as of now, we're just talking about 2, 4, 5, 10 soldiers. For example, Norway is going to send just 2 soldiers. Germany is going to send just 10 soldiers. France is going to send maybe 5 soldiers. I don't know. So the European countries are sending forces, and obviously these forces are not able to do anything if the United States of America decide to change the situation. But this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is a legal precedent. This is the most important because it seems that this is for the first time when the European countries are increasing their presence, are increasing the number of forces altogether in this or that part of the world, so without the participation of the United States of America. So maybe this one is the first step towards the creation of a separate military alliance of the European countries without the United States of America. The coalition of willing and the European countries were talking a lot about, for example, deploying of their troops on the territory of Ukraine. The coalition of willing was willing to deploy 5,000 soldiers, 15,000 soldiers, 50,000 soldiers, but all those talks were just talks and were just letters on the paper without any, without anything that has anything common with the reality. And the deployment of troops on the territory of Greenland is the first legal precedent in European countries, and the next step and the next deployment of the forces would be bigger probably and much more powerful. This is a very important step when talking about the European independence. As of now, this situation looks like very weak, but once again, this is the first step and this is a legal precedent. Now let's discuss the situation in Europe and let's talk about Ukraine. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very important updates. The Ukrainians are preparing themselves before the next massive missile and drone attack, and most likely this attack is going to take place very soon. And today, pro-Ukrainian sources published this video, and when talking about this video, nothing special from the first sign, but if you go deeper and if you try to understand the details of this video, you will find and you will see that here we can see a Russian drone of Geran type that was flying above the city of Kiev, and here we can see the moment when anti-drone drone of the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed this Geran drone. So this is the most important thing, and this is exactly what the Ukrainian authorities were trying to emphasize, that they have enough of, or they have lots of drones that can bring down Russian drones of Geran type, and these drones, anti-drone drones, are much more cheaper than the Geran drones. This is a very important video, and the Ukrainian authorities are trying to tell us that if the Russians are going to launch another massive missile and drone attack within the next days, the Ukrainians have something to show the Russians. So let's wait and see, of course, what is going to be next. But during the previous 12 hours, we received a report that the Russians began the preparation relocation of 295 MS strategic bombers from the Ukrainka air base to airfields closer to Ukraine has been detected. Russia might be preparing a new combined missile and drone strike within the next few days. Yesterday, Russian drones were actively conducting reconnaissance on targets in Kiev. The threat level for the capital and the region is elevated. So the Russians were flying above objects of energy infrastructure, trying to understand what the Ukrainians were able to repair, what the Ukrainians were able to relaunch. The Russians most likely managed to collect lots of updates, lots of information and pictures, and the Russians most likely know for sure what kind of targets they're going to attack within the next several days. So everybody is preparing for these strikes. Ukrainians most likely will try to show their new weapon, their anti-drone drones, and the Russians most likely will present us their modified Geran drones. During the previous days, we received lots of reports that the Russians improved their Geran drones significantly. They can now bring down aircrafts, helicopters, or other air vehicles that try to bring them down. So these Geran drones are going to be well modified. An emergency regime will be introduced in the energy sector for Ukraine that was stated by Zelensky following the results of the meeting on emergency circumstances in the energy sector. So Ukrainians are preparing themselves before this massive attack. So of course, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but something tells me that due to the situation that the next days, the worst temperature in Ukraine, the worst weather conditions are awaits for Ukraine. We believe that Russians will try to use these weather conditions to destroy completely the energy infrastructure of Ukraine, or at least to deal significant damage, with the purpose, of course, to force Ukraine to accept demands of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, Ukrainian authorities stated that Kiev's power station number 5 and power station number 6 will not operate at full capacity until at least the end of the season, said the Ukrainian energy expert Gennady Ryabetsev. He's saying this not because the Ukrainians are not able to operate these power stations at full capacity. They are not going to do this because they understand that Russians will continue bombing and attacking the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. So that is why it is not a safe and wise decision to operate them at full capacity. They will try to use them at the lower level or lower capacity as possible. So let's wait and see. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. And first, let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to improve their positions. We see that the Russian offensive operation in the Zaporozhye direction is gaining momentum. The Russians, first of all, are bombing and attacking the energy infrastructure in the city with the purpose to slow down the reinforcements and reserves that are heading towards the line of combat contact. And at the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation. The group of forces Dnipro managed to improve their position significantly during the previous day. So, for example, this is the situation by the end of the 11th of January of 2026, and this is the moment plus minus the moment when the Russians launched their major offensive, and since that moment we've been adjusting the map almost every single day. This is the end of the 12th of January, this is the end of the 13th of January. The Russians improved their positions to the southeast of Stepnogorsk. This is the end of the 14th of January, and this is the beginning of the 15th of January. During the previous 24 hours, 12 hours, hours, the Russians improved their positions around the settlement of Primorske. We see that the Russians are trying to maintain the line and to create a very strong foothold right in front of the main defense belt of the armed forces of Ukraine to the south of the city of Zaporozhye. And the Russians continue their offensive operation in the area of the settlements of Magdalenovka, Novobaikovska, Zapasnaya, Yakovlevka, and of course the settlement of Pavlovka. So there are very heavy clashes, and we expect that within the next several days the Russians will, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm additional progress on the ground. At the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation along the river of Gaichur, but this time the Russians are much more slower in comparison with the late December of 2025. The Russians are moving, but the progress on the ground is not so big as we used to see. During the previous 12 hours, the Russians, according to pro-Russian sources and neutral mappers, managed to improve their positions along the river of Gaichur, and the Russians, according to these mappers, managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Priluki, and the Russians answered to the settlement of Alexandra Konstantinovka from the south. So we see the final days and the final battles for the final battle for the river of Gaichul bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the river. Furthermore, the Russians continue improving their positions to the south of the settlement of Gulyai-Polye. Another tree line was taken by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Now we can say that the Russians managed to restore the logistics between the city of Gulyai-Polye, the settlement of Palogi, and the mainland. So now Russians most likely, after they secured this R85 road, most likely will intensify their offensive operation with the purpose to move faster and faster in the western direction.
To sider af samme ansigt. Den ene
Now let's talk about the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 12 hours, we have a video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. This is the video, and we discussed this video yesterday. Let's take a look at this video once again, and here we can see how a Ukrainian drone was attacking positions and forces of the armed forces of the Russian Federation to the south of the settlement of Bereztok. Based on this video, as we discussed during the previous video, we have adjusted the map. This is the situation by the end of the 14th of January, and this is the beginning of the 15th of January. We have colored everything to the south of the settlement of Bereztok, including the southern part of the Kleban-Butska water reservoir and the northern part as well. The Russians continue offensive operation, trying to get and accumulate as much as possible forces on the territory of the settlement of Ilinka and the western part of the city of Konstantinovka. Several mappers, including neutral mappers, increased a gray zone in this area as much as further in the northern direction. So it seems that the defense of the city of Konstantinovka is collapsing. We are waiting for additional updates from this territory, and we believe that in coming days the Russians will publish, or the Ukrainians will publish, videos that confirm Russian presence in the western part of the settlement, especially, and the most interesting, whether the Russians are able to confirm their presence on the territory of the Konstantinovka citadel. We are talking about the high-rise building area that is located in the western and the southwestern parts of the settlement. Now let's move further. As for the Slaviansk direction, during the previous 12 hours, small changes on the ground were recorded, and when talking about the situation in this area during the previous 3 days, huge changes were recorded. So this is the situation by the end of the 12th of January, this is the 13th of January, and this is the beginning, the end of the 14th, and this is the beginning of the 15th of January. The Russians improved their positions significantly in the southern part of Nikiforovka, and more sources are saying that the battles are taking place on the territory of the settlement itself. Furthermore, the Russians continue offensive operation in the fields, trying to get as close as possible the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka, and the Russians continue offensive operation further in the western direction from the city of Siversk. As of now, as you can see, there are lots of empty spaces, lots of fields, fortifications, trenches, tree lines, fields, and so on, and not so many villages in this direction. So that's why it will take time before the Russians are able to secure these fields, and before the Russians are able to answer, let's say, more or less a big settlement in this direction. We are talking about the village of Raya Alexandrovka. As for the Liman direction, during the previous 12 hours, the most important video is coming from the area of the settlement by the name of Mayaki. Here we can see how the Russians continued bombing and attacking the bridge that was created by the armed forces of Ukraine in this area for the logistic purposes. And as you can see, as a result of this attack, the bridge was completely destroyed. So this bridge was created by Ukrainians in this area, and now there is no bridge anymore. Though this is not the first bridge that was created by Ukrainians. Another bridge was destroyed in the area of the settlement by the name of Raigorodok. So this video was published around the 7th of January of 2026. Here we can see how Ukrainians were about to finish the creation of another river crossing, but the Russians discovered and attacked. First of all, they attacked this engineering equipment that was trying to escape. So this is the first bridge that was destroyed within January of 2026, and this is already the second one. So as you can, and these two bridges are not the only bridges that Ukrainians have for their logistics. We believe that there are more, and the Russians are trying to search them, and the Russians, of course, as soon as they search them, they try to destroy them as soon as possible. As for the equipment's direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. Just several mappers increased the gray zone in the northern part of the settlement, which means that the Russians are conducting a counter-offensive operation in the northern part of the city with the purpose to restore control over the territories they lost during the Ukrainian counter-offensive. As for the Kharkiv direction, during the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded in the area of the city of Volchansk along the river of Seversky Donetsk. Pro-neutral mappers stated that Russians are about to finish the battle for the territory around the settlement of Grafskaya, and that the Russians are going to begin assault operation in the direction of the settlement also in coming days. As for the most northern direction of the Sumy area, the Russians would like to remind you, yes, they reported that they managed to establish complete control over the village of Komarovka. Today, neutral mappers clarified the situation by adding additional territories under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. But as of the beginning of the 15th of January, it's still very difficult to understand whether the Russians are launching their major offensive operation in the northern part of Ukraine with the purpose to take under complete control the launching site of the armed forces of Ukraine, or it's just the media victory and another no-name village that was taken by Russians without any purpose. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.